I'm one of the lead sales engineers. I'm primarily over RBVM and now EASM. And we are going to have a session on how to effectively manage your ransomware susceptibility in the RBVM tool. So I'll give a quick kind of description of what RBVM is to just kind of give you an idea. So RBVM is our risk-based vulnerability management tool. And essentially what we're doing is we're taking various inputs, so things like your Nessus, your Qualys, your application scanners, right? Bringing that into the environment and just giving you a better way to prioritize. One of the modules that we have, or one of the dashboards that we focus on in the environment, is our Ransomware Dashboard. So kind of like essentially giving you the ability to see what that susceptibility looks like in your environment. So taking all your inputs and then kind of just giving you a way to better prioritize that information. And then that dashboard in particular is focusing on that ransomware susceptibility. So where I'm going to kind of start is just talk about CVEs in general. So in the real world, right, there's about 310,000 CVEs across the board, right? It's increasing every day, never fails. What we're doing here is kind of breaking that down from, what's weaponized vulnerabilities. We're looking at about 43,000. What are we considered dangerous capabilities, those things that have those RCEs and PEs, right? Remote code execution, privileged escalations. We take that down now about 12,000. Then we start looking at those things that are tied to ransomware. So that's where our kind of focus is in the session, right? About 327 CVEs out there have some sort of associated ransomware to those. And then finally, we have what we call trending. So those are the things that are in the real world, that attackers are actively focusing on. So whatever CVEs that an attacker may be focusing on, we're able to gather that information through our threat feeds, through our vulnerability knowledge base, and then mark those as trending, right? Because we know there's an attacker focusing on those specific CVEs. So one of the things is we have to prioritize those vulnerabilities, and that's often in times a difficult problem, right? So 74% of the ransomware vulnerabilities are not typically rated as critical based on the CVSS 3.0 standard. Of those, 156 of those vulnerabilities are not included on the CISA KEV. So is everybody familiar with CISA KEV? I would assume so, right? That's that wonderful email I'm sure everybody gets every couple of days or sometimes even multiple times a day, right? Telling you these are the CVEs you need to work on the most. So there's about 20 of those, or about 156, that aren't part of that catalog at the moment. And then we have about 20 combined ransomware vulnerabilities that aren't detected by the most popular scanner. So we're talking like your Nessus, your Qualys, your Rapid7. So going back to CVSS, they analyze those vulnerabilities and they tie them to the ransomwares. So about 46% of those vulnerabilities analyzed are rated as critical to CVSS, right? So it may not have an associated ransomware, but it's still marked as a critical. So one of the things that we're doing with RBVM is giving you that ability to say, hey, this may be critical and maybe a 10, right? But it has no associated threat, no associated weaponization, no exploits, that sort of thing. So it really doesn't need to be a 10, right? I don't need to focus on that. I know there's not something out there that's going to take advantage of that exploit or that particular CVE. And this kind of just breaks down that scoring analysis, right? Of those that are critical, right? 134 total, but what of those are actually trending in the real world right now, right? And then those are high, medium, and of course those that are low. What's interesting, I don't know if you noticed that there's actually medium and lows that are weaponized as well, right? That have some sort of tie. And when you're looking at your data, and if you're looking at it through our tool, through RBVM, we give you really nice ways to understand that and see that as well, right? So if I have an RCE or a PE that may be a medium, you don't typically see that if you're looking just through the tool, through a scanning tool itself. So with our environment, you have the ability to do that. And if we get to the point of I'm able to get into the environment, we'll kind of highlight that a little bit as well. Some of the challenges that we face, right? A risk-based approach to vulnerability management is needed. And that's kind of going back to that whole prioritization piece, right? It may be a 10, but may not necessarily be that critical to the infrastructure because there's nothing tied to it to make it an exploit or for an attacker to take advantage of it. So like 50, I've got to read all the good statistics here. So 53% of the IT security professional, or 53% of those IT professionals, right, are organizing and prioritizing vulnerabilities. And that takes up most of your time. So if you're dealing with just a traditional scanner, right, you're pulling that data out, you're probably getting a spreadsheet. right? You have to then go dig through thousands of lines of that data that you've outputted at that scanner and try to figure out what is my most prioritized findings that I got to deal with. So with RBVM, you bring that in, we're going to do all that heavy lifting for you. Kind of make sense? So the solution as a whole, right? Prioritize immediate actions based on threat risk. So what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to take that finding, give you some contextualization around it, show you the risk-based view and the posture of that, right? So here we can see, for instance, this is a Qualys finding. We get that plugin ID, we get, of course, that title, we get that severity. We're going to see what the scanner even reported as at the severity. So we can see how low here that it put it in as a 4, but we're bringing that all the way up to a 9. And again, that's based on that additional threat contextualization that we're bringing in. Does it have an RCEP? Does it have any trending or active identifiers? One of the other things that we utilize is that VRR score, right? So here's the severity, but we have the adjusted score. So let me kind of give you a quick explanation of what VRR is. So VRR is what we call our vulnerability risk rating. The pieces that are going into that is, again, we're looking at threat, we're looking at malware exploits, any trending findings against it. And we're going to take that, and then based on all those factors, is either increase that score or even in some cases decrease the score, right? Not necessarily everything's a 10, but if there's stuff attached to it, ransomware, RCEs, PEs, et cetera, then we're going to bring that up higher. The goal is to improve the efficiency of your vulnerability management process, right? Kind of the example I already gave, right? If we have a scanner, most of the time we're going to export that data into a spreadsheet, and then we have to dig through hundreds of lines of code or hundreds of lines of results for that particular dump of that data set. With RBVM, we're going to give you tools that are going to give you the ability to correlate and analyze that data, or even give you the ability to automate some of the things. So those things you do on a day-to-day basis, right? I can build playbooks in our environment. So essentially something as simple as anything that's a critical that comes in and has an associated ransomware, I can assign to a certain individual, right? And that individual may be able to then disposition. If I have a ticketing connector hooked up to the environment, I can have him automatically go in every Monday morning after this rule is run, or the playbook is run, and then go in and disposition those to the right teams for the work for the week. Notifications. Within the environment, you also have that ability to set up notifications, either going to email, going to Team, going to Slack. So I can say, if a new ransomware comes into my environment, I can have somebody notified right away. System views, so the ability to filter in our environment. We have a very, very robust filtering system, giving you the ability to literally slice and dice your data however you'd like. Right? I can take it all the way down. If I can build a filter with it, I can turn that into a playbook. I can save that as a view for other folks. Gives me the ability to look at trending CVEs. I can look at the FBI, DHS, top 10 exploited. And then, of course, things like cross-scripting. And then finally, if there's a patch available, right? I now have that ability within the RBVM tool to hook that up to Ivanti patch for neurons and set that into a specific patch group as well. One of the other things we're going to be able to do is ensure that there's better collaboration within the teams within the environment as well. We have a full RBAC control in the environment. We have ready-made widgets, dashboards. The user, again, going back to that filter-based paradigm. Once we build a filter, if it's a data set that we're wanting to track, we can take that and turn that into a widget and apply it to a dashboard as well. So we have full customization of our dashboards. You have the ability to create your own widgets, take any widget that you have from any dashboard in the environment to build something that has the KPIs and KRIs really covered up. Deep linking, so I can take a link, send that out directly. User can click on it, and we're going to have that deep link to whatever view that person was looking at as well, or finding for that matter. Take it all the way to the finding level. We have the RS3 score. Anybody familiar with the RS3 score? I'm sure a few of you are. So our RS3 score is our asset-based scoring paradigm. It's a credit-like score, so it's a 300 to 850 models. You can kind of, does this have a pointer on it? No. So it's a 300 to 850 base model, just like a credit score, right? So that lower the number, the more risky the asset is. The higher the number, the less risky it is. We do that across both the application side and the host side of the environment, and then we're going to give you that overall RS3 score for your entire organization. We even do it as far as grouping as well. And you'll see the little one at the bottom. We give you a paradigm in the environment that we call workflows, right? So I have the ability to create a workflow against a finding or multiple findings, meaning I can do a risk acceptance, severity update, false positive, or even a remediation. So if I'm doing a lot of risk acceptance in my environment, I'm going to give you your true score as well. In terms of getting data into our environment, we have multiple inputs. We consider ourselves scanner agnostic, right? So of course we have the big three. We also have things like Rapid7, Acunetics, CrowdStrike, Tanium. On the asset management side, we have things like CMDB or Snow, ServiceNow CMDB. Ticketing, we've got Jira, ServiceNow, Remedy, and of course Ivanti ITSM. On the policy compliance side, we have things like Qualys Policy Compliance and AWS. And then we also have a paradigm that we call generic upload. So you may be using a scanner that we may not have a formalized solution for. We give you the ability to take a data set as a CSV of that, bring that into our environment. You get to basically map it to our environment and basically create that custom scanner for you. We'll even provide upload scripts for you, giving you the ability to take that data, throw it in a cron, right? I don't have a formalized connector to an API, but I can easily just load that in, put it in a cron, have it automatically push to whatever cadence I'd like. What we're kind of looking at here is what the process is once that data comes in, right? We're going to look for that threat contextualization. We're then going to give you the ability to organize and label, right? So creating groups in the environment. I can do it by technology stack. I can do it by geographic location, however I want. Then we're going to give you the ability to make it actionable, right? Again, going back to that prioritization, understand from a dashboard, from a findings perspective, what are those most important findings I should be focusing on first? The paradigm we kind of take with that is we're going to look at what's trending first, then we're going to look at those RCEs and Ps, what's weaponized, and then everything else. Then we have, of course, reporting. We have about 5 different canned reports in the environment right now. But again, you have the full dashboarding functionality as well, right? I could take that dashboard I created, dump that as a PDF directly out of my browser, throw that into a presentation I need to go present to my CISO or my CIO. And then finally, automation goes back again to the playbooks and the workflows. So with our workflow system, again, we can do things like false positive, risk acceptance, severity change, and of course, a remediation. And then playbooks gives us the ability to automate those day-to-day tasks. Next, we're going to be able to take a few other inputs. So we have what we call vulnerability knowledge base that sits in the back end of this. So vulnerability knowledge base is our threat feed database. In this particular case, we have about 100 different threat feeds that go into this. And it's going to take that data and it's going to say, okay, does this CVE have associated ransomware? Okay, we're going to attach it to that, right? And that all goes into the score. We have a full Swagger-based API. So if I need to pull data out or I want to automate things in a different way, I can utilize the API to do that as well. We've talked about ticketing already, right? Ivanti ITSM, Remedy, Jira, ServiceNow. And then we also have the ability to pull data from that API from a source in perspective, right? I could take data out, push that into my Demisto or my Splunk. And then, of course, finally, the Ivanti patch management for neurons. This is our ransomware dashboard. So from here, we're going to give you some really good metrics, right? We have our KPIs at the top. We can see how many ransomware findings we have from a host and application perspective. So if you're not bringing in application data, obviously you only see the host side of the house. But if you are bringing in both, we're going to give you the ability to see both of those numbers on a single pane of glass. We then get to see what my groups are that have open ransomware findings. What of those assets are with open ransomware findings? Sorry, the first one was the total. The next one is what's trending, right? What is in the real world that I have in my environment that I know somebody's attacking? And then finally, we have what fixes are available in the environment. Then we have a nice breakdown of the funnel. So if we start at the left-hand side, right? What are my total number of CVEs? That's actually a unique number. So we're going to look at it from a unique perspective here. We're going to see our findings, our threats, our assets. What are our number of fixes? Then we're going to look at what has a ransomware exposure to it, right? So we go from that 23,000 down to 183. Next, we're going to look at our ransomwares that have those associated RCEs and Ps. And everybody knows what an RCE and P is. Sorry, I keep using the acronym and nobody knows it. So RCE, right, is remote code execution. Those are those exploits that an attacker has the ability to get on to remotely execute code on a specific system. A PE is a privilege escalation. So that's saying that the attacker has the ability to come in as a normal user, but there's an exploit on that device that allows them to elevate themselves. So it could be a domain admin, could be a system admin. Then we have, again, back to those trending findings. Those findings that we know attackers are focusing on and we have in our environment. Bottom two, our threat by age, just a quick hygiene chart showing you year over year what your susceptibility looks like based on those findings. And then probably one of my favorite ones is the CVE by ransomware family. The reason I love this so much is because it tells you and shows you all of those ransomwares that you hear in the news, right? You have the WannaCries, you have the Lockies, right? Petias, Cerberus. Now I can visually see that effect in my environment. And all of these dashboards are visual queries. So any number, any bar you see, at any point in time, I can click on any one of those and I can directly drill into that data set. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and try to switch over to the platform real quick and we'll kind of walk through some things there. Any questions so far before we get started? So where I'm kind of looking at, just to kind of give you an idea, again, remember we have that ability to do multiple inputs. What we're basically showing here is our integrations page. So here we can see the network side of the house, right? The various inputs we have access to, AWS Inspector, things like OpenVAS, Qualys, Tenable, Rapid7, and of course that generic upload I talked about earlier. Most recently, we just released Wiz. So if anybody's using Wiz, we have a connector for that now as well. Then on the application side of the house, things like Aqua, Checkmarks, HCL, again, Rapid7, and then things like your SaaS, DAS, and most SaaS, DAS, OSS, and container tools. Next, we have, of course, the ticketing systems, asset management, compliance, and of course, patch management. But where we're going to kind of jump from here is over to our dashboards. So here we have our ransomware dashboard. Again, just like the screenshot you just saw, right? Those various inputs we can bring in. But we also have things like our top ransomware families. So again, looking at the CVEs based on those ransomware families, what are my top ransomware families? So looking at the broader picture of the environment, right? What are my ransomware families that are most prevalent in my environment? What's nice here is I can obviously see that family, but I can also get an idea of the number of CVEs associated to that family as well. Then I can see that impact to my environment, right? How many assets are impacted, how many findings are impacted as well. Then we could look at the specific look at the top CVEs in a specific family, right? So in this particular case, we have the CVE from 2018, right? Focused on, it's part of the stop family and the prevalence in the environment, right? 389 assets across 702 findings. Last couple here at the bottom, right? What are my ransomware affected assets? Breaking those down from an internal and external perspective, right? I'm sure some of you have seen and heard about EASM, right? So kind of the opposite, giving you the ability to see both in this environment, right? We can see what's internal, about 831, and then externally about 1022. And then finally, looking at our grouping structure. So remember earlier, I said you can group and slice and dice your data however you want. Again, taking those different groups, I can do things like, I have a Windows Server group, I have a Windows Workstations group. I can then create a full roll-up group. So in this particular case, my all Windows group is one of my most susceptible groups in this case. And then breaking those down all the way down. Any questions at this point? This one here? This one. You want to look at internal or external? All right. So with a simple click, remember we're giving you the ability to see both sides of the house here as well, right? I can look at the application side or the host side. In this case, there's no applications on this side, but I do have 831 assets. So this takes us to the host view, so a higher level than going down to the finding view. A couple things to note, right? On the left-hand side, I've got quick filters available to me. I can expand those out and I can quickly choose different things. So I can look at asset criticality. I want to know what scanner data I'm looking at, right? I can see those various scanners listed here. If I want to focus on a specific scanner, simple click, and I can dig into that data set. OS family information, then of course I have my user views, right? Again, in the environment, we give you the ability to create specific views based on data sets, right? I can add additional columns, remove additional columns, add additional information, save that out, and then share that out with others in my environment. One of the other nice things we do is from that grouping paradigm is we're utilizing group-based controls as well, right? So I could be in part of group A, we're gonna have a microphone there. Or somebody else could be a part of group B. If that other person's not a part of the other group, they're never gonna see that data set. So a real nice way to segregate that data between different environments. So I can have my Unix people only focusing on their Unix problems, my Windows individuals working on just those Windows issues. And then of course, system filters. I get back up. And we'll give that just a second. So from the list view perspective itself, right? I can see my total number of assets. I can see assets that were recently ingested, those that have trending findings, those that have ransomware exposure. Bless you. Then going back to the filters, one of the things I love about our system filters is, of course, when they're updated, you'll be able to see when they were updated. So here we can see the CISA KEV was updated as of April 4th. But one of the other things that we do whenever a 0 day has been released, within 24 hours, I'm going to have a filter available for you. And again, without having to click on that filter, I'm going to see what my susceptibility looks like. So in this particular case, right, I got about 2,800 assets that are on the CISA KEV list. Simple click there, and then I can filter down to those as well. If we're looking at just the asset level itself, simple click on a finding, or on an asset in this case, right, I can see that breakdown. Right? What is my host? What is my RS3 score, right? So here we can see this RS3 score is all the way down to a 327, right? Taking that 300 to 850 scale, applying it to that asset information. Why is it doing that? Well, we can dig a little further. We can see what our SLA. So another nice feature within RBVM is we give you a full SLA module as well, fully customizable on how you want to set that. We get that asset details. We get our group information. So here you can see I'm only a part of 3 groups, but I'm also an admin. So I get to see everything else, but I can see the groups that I'm also not a part of. Then we can see that finding information as well, right? Breaking that down by critical, high, medium, low, and informational, and giving us that total. And then what are finding trends? And then finally, we get to see the vulnerabilities or the categories, right, that are associated to that asset, which in this case is a bit of a long list, than the scanner data that we're bringing in, right? So here we can see that in this particular case, this asset is also being scanned by CrowdStrike and also by Nessus. Tagging, give you the ability to bring in those tags from those tools as well. So when it comes down to filtering my data, I can easily do that based on those tags that I've already set up in that environment. Easy way to start creating groups, automating those to get those automation of those playbooks. We have a feature called custom attributes. We give you the ability to assign data sets to different models, right? So in this case, I can do host and group from this perspective, but I can create custom data sets then that can be applied to those assets as well. So our notifications, we have a full notifications engine built in. So here we can see a couple notifications that are set up, but if I pop into the preferences, I can quickly see those type of notifications that I have access to, right? I can see when there's a new critical VRR or a new critical finding based on VRR available. What is the change in RS3? Things like vendor subscriptions. Even if I want to know, have my integrations running every week, every day. If there's a failure of some sort, I have the ability to turn that on as well. Delivery preferences, right? We have the ability to deliver, as I said earlier, through a few different channels. So if I come in here and click, I can see that I can go either to email, Slack, or Teams, right? So now I can take that notification instead of going to a single individual. I can now set it to a group in a Teams chat or a Slack channel. From a playbook perspective, right? If I jump up here to my automation, I could see my various playbooks. So one of the nice things we do is we give you 10 playbooks. Each of those playbooks can have 50 rules applied. If I dig into my favorite one, my VIP device management playbook. So here we have 3 rules within this playbook, where we can do things like apply a tag, apply a VIP by an IP address. If we come in here and edit this now, we can see the actions we can take against this. So here we have our title, our description, and the things that we can do within the environment. So we can do things like update a severity, apply or unapply a tag, set a default, add it to a group, remove it from a group, right? Update even the business criticality of the asset from a playbook. So as that data is being ingested based on those playbook rules, we can have those automations on and those things automatically happen for you. In this particular case, we're adding it to a group. We're focusing on that host model. And then we're choosing our group. And then we have the filter, kind of what I spoke about earlier, right? I get to build that filter out for the data sets or the things I want to do. So if I can build a filter in our environment, I can do something with it from a playbook perspective.